First of all, Tyler, if you could give us a little insight into how this will now be set up. The board, we understand, set up similar to the Gaming Control Board. Has the governor given you specific areas he really wants you to focus on?
Sure. So the board is fully authorized now as of yesterday, July 1st. It's a 5-member board. 3 members have been appointed so far by the governor. So there's 2 remaining members that need to be appointed. Our first board meeting will be on July 21st at the end of this month, where we will look to adopt, or the board will consider adopting, its core set of regulations. There's 130 pages of regulations that we've currently been workshopping, getting industry and public input on. And once those are adopted and registered, then those will really kickstart CCB's oversight of the industry.
Okay. Now, CBD products, some might think they're a bit of a Wild West, if you will. They don't necessarily have the same regulation as other products. Is that something you'll be looking into?
Well, as you know, hemp is regulated by the Department of Agriculture, but there is absolutely crossover there. So I think soon, and I know a lot of states and a lot of my counterparts in other states are kind of grappling with how CBD and hemp interplays with cannabis in states that cannabis is legal. So I certainly anticipate that's something that we will keep a close eye on, working with our partners at the Department of Agriculture as we go forward.
Okay. What will you be doing differently?
So what you'll see now with the CCB in place is likely a refocus on truly the public policy that was laid out by the governor and the legislature when they passed AB 533, which established the Cannabis Compliance Board. And that public policy really allows the board and wills the board to be much stricter with licensees when appropriate. It asks for an emphasis on protecting the public health and safety of Nevadans and visitors to our state. It wants to see the industry be inclusive, right? And so the industry to be representative of the communities that it serves. And then I think likely most important is a focus on the character of the individuals that are in the industry and those that want to come into the industry, to make sure that we keep a close eye on our reputation, because the reputation of the industry here is a direct reflection on the state of Nevada itself. And I think that's something that's very important. I think that's something that the board is going to take a very close look at moving forward.
How will you have a role in licenses going forward?
So the board will soon promulgate regulations on how we roll out any new licensing period. There isn't a new licensing period currently planned. We have a number of licenses. I think we have 71 operational dispensaries in the state. But soon it will be time. And the board is going to take input from industry, take input from other experts, and really kind of roll out what that process looks like going forward.
Okay. What about as we move forward, like you say, how will random product sampling and lab tests be handled?
Well, we've had some lab issues in the past, and so I think that's something that the board is going to look to tackle as soon as they can. You'll see some of the regulations that are up for adoption at the end of this month, as I spoke of. Regulation 11 deals with laboratory testing, and you see some enhancements in there already. But going forward, it's something that it's going to be top of mind for this board and for staff as we go out there. Again, to make sure at the end of the day, the highest quality and the safest product is out there and available to those legally allowed to use them.
You talk about the safest product. What has been the biggest area of concern, do you think, so far with the industry?
Well, I think lab testing, certainly making sure that we have a good idea of what products out there and that the testing is uniform between all of the labs test. And I think that's crucial because, again, public health and safety is first and foremost for us. But I think also, again, our ability to vet individuals that want to come into the industry and be a part of this industry. It's a privileged industry. And so it's very important we know who's coming in, who's playing a role. And important when we do go through that process of vetting individuals that come in, that we do so in a very transparent and public way. The board itself now, as a public board that has public meetings, will allow for that process. And I think that really sets this industry up for success going forward.
There were some issues in the past with some recalled products. How do you plan to tackle that moving forward?
Sure, and that comes down to good inspections, good auditing, and good policies and regulations in place. I can tell you in the last 6 months, we've done a number of enforcement actions that have been public. We've seen our results bring back a little bit. Some of the test results, some of the higher THC, we're actually seeing our enforcement actions have a very positive effect. Now, we still have a long way to go, but I think what you'll also see is the board publishing and making public a lot more information that we previously did not. And I think that just allows everyone to have insight into what's going on, and certainly allows us to have stronger enforcement capabilities with all parts of the industry.
What direction do you think delivery will go? Will we start seeing more of it? We know that several businesses have commented into our newsroom saying that the limits on what they can have in a car, on what time, hinders them. How do you think that will progress forward?
Well, delivery played a huge role during the COVID crisis and continues to. At the end of March, when the crisis began, we did everything that we could to allow the industry to keep moving forward. The governor's directive put the cannabis industry to a delivery-only scenario. We did a virtual vehicle inspection process that allowed us to quickly and still effectively and within the regulations approve vehicles to get them on the streets. Since then, we've approved over 800 vehicles through that process. I think we approved 130 new vehicles in the first weekend alone. That happened back in March. So we've really allowed within the regulations the industry to pivot some of their business models. We moved from delivery only to curbside, and then now in phase 2 to a limited in-store. So I think we've seen delivery come back a little bit, but I think it's still a major component of their business. Going forward on limits and how much delivery drivers can hold, those limits were developed with public safety in mind and with input from local law enforcement. And so we now have a board that can deliberate on these issues and allow for public input and pivot and maneuver quickly. So if a change needs to be made, we can make it. However, we feel comfortable where we're at with those limits, but we also feel comfortable bringing them up for really good input and conversation with the industry if there is a desire to change those.
Okay. Do you have a plan to deal with places having to store cash on site?
Well, cash will be an issue and an ongoing issue until we likely see some intervention from the feds, and that would come from banking legislation. But right now, it is a cash-based business. It's something that we monitor as closely as we can, especially in conjunction with the Department of Taxation, who still collects those tax payments. But we're here to do everything that we can from a state side and a state perspective to make sure the process remains safe. But we'll also be looking to federal legislation at some point, and I think it's inevitable, at some point to allow for more conventional banking with the industry. And I think it's sorely needed, especially as you see more states move to legalize cannabis.
But it could be, years, maybe even, scary to say, a decade out. Who knows how long it'll take? Any idea?
You're talking about Congress, so your guess is as good as mine.
I know. So true. All right, one last question, and then I'll ask if there's anything more you'd like to add. What will the interplay be between your agency and the Cannabis Advisory Commission?
So the Cannabis Advisory Commission, that is a 12-member commission. There are 4 agency directors, including me. I will chair the Advisory Commission. 8 of the members will be appointed by the governor, but they will really be representative of the industry. It's going to be a great forum for the industry to come in and for us to tackle certain issues and ultimately make recommendations. And they'll be non-binding, but they'll be recommendations to the compliance board to consider. Through the commission, we'll also be able to implement certain subcommittees. So if there's nuanced issues that we need to discuss, we need to study, we can do that as well. And I think it just allows for total participation, a more global participation from the industry, from the public, for the board's benefit.
Anything more you would like to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate that. And we'll, of course,
Absolutely.
be chatting with you in the future as things progress along. So thank you again.
Anything, let us know.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.